Hi there, and thank you for joining me today. I'm going to be sharing 5 practices that you can begin that will help your memory. Things you can do to protect your memory. Memory is something we all treasure, we value it, and it's probably one of the great fears that we all have is losing our memory. For many of you, this is a very real journey. Many of you have lived through this journey with a loved one, or maybe you have been diagnosed with memory loss, and perhaps you're searching for some things that you can do to help. And I'm going to be sharing some research with you today. Neurologists Dr. Dean and Ayesha Sherzai have offered a message of real hope for this with all the research they have done. And here's what they say: brain health is shaped in large part by the choices that we make every day. And so they've dedicated their lives to combating the global dementia crisis, and they use the latest research in order to do that. I'm going to be sharing that with you today. Now, full disclosure, my doctorate is in learning and leadership. I am not a neurologist. I do not have a medical degree. I am simply sharing the information that I have done through a lot of research with through neurologists and through studying a lot about brain health, and particularly from the doctors Sherzai. And so that's what I'm sharing today. Let's keep in mind that dementia is an umbrella category of a group of types of memory loss, and Alzheimer is the biggest, with 60% to 70% of all dementias. Well, doctors Sherzai show us that how you interact with your world, with your environment, determines the outcome when it comes to brain health. And if you are in early diagnosis, there is really good news for you. Listen to this data. 90% of Alzheimer's can potentially be avoided with 5 lifestyle changes. That is staggering, and it is such encouraging news. Well, these neurologists have basing on their research, have 5 practices that can help you reduce your risk. They're using the acronym NEURO: nutrition, exercise, unwinding, restorative sleep, and finally optimize. And that's going to give us all a practical path forward, just one habit at a time. Did you know that our brain, the human brain, which weighs only 3 pounds, has 87 billion neurons? That is such a marvel of connectivity. Well, the more these neurons connect with each other, one or two connecting, but the more they connect in multiple ways, the more resilient our brain becomes. And that's what we're after here. That's why these 5 habits are so important. Now, we begin with the first one. It's nutrition. That is the one that is a very immediate way that you can begin to daily practice caring for your brain. Every meal either builds or degrades the brain. Every meal you eat either builds up your brain or degrades your brain. Well, the Sherzais emphasize that what we eat affects inflammation, blood flow, and memory resilience. Well, they emphasize eating a Mediterranean diet because that is a wonderful eating pattern with whole grains, with nuts, with seeds, with vegetables, legumes, fatty fish, salads, where you put in beans and quinoa and walnuts and olive oil. And they say by practicing this Mediterranean diet, the research shows a 53% reduction of Alzheimer's with this diet that is either Mediterranean or some gut-friendly diet. Now, as a part of this diet practicing, this isn't a diet to lose weight. This is a diet in which you practice everyday healthy eating. It does not include refined foods, processed foods, And a diet that's refined means that the carbohydrates are refined carbohydrates. So that means it's processing out good things like fiber and nutrients. And you're going to find refined diets in white bread and pastries and sugary snacks, the processed food that is in the middle of the grocery store. And this diet is going to spike your sugar, and that is going to contribute to a lot of health issues. What research shows is that a refined diet lacks fiber. That's really important for brain health because when you have just gone a short time, a few days without fiber, then you're showing that your brain is being affected in just a few days. Here's what research has said, that refined diets lacking fiber impair the amygdala. Now, the amygdala is where we have our emotional memories. And so we don't want that affected, but processed food, refined diets affect it. Well, the amygdala is where we have emotional learning, and that's where our experiences live. And we don't want to affect our memory of the experiences we've had in life. Well, the best sources of fiber, and we need soluble fiber, are oats and bran and beans, lentils and barley and apples and citrus and pears and flaxseed and chia seed and carrots and Brussels sprouts and psyllium. Those are good forms of fiber that we need to put in our food every day. I eat quite a bit of fiber every day and every meal. I do eat a lot of beans and a lot of chia seeds and flaxseed and good vegetables for us. And I encourage you to do that. Include fiber in your diet. Well, there is also much evidence in the value of having about a tablespoon of olive oil today. That helps our brain. There was a study done at Harvard. It was a massive 28-year Harvard study with over 92,000 adults. And the participants who consumed 7 grams, that is not even a half of a tablespoon of olive oil, had a 28% lower risk of dementia-related death compared to those who never consumed it. That's pretty impressive. So I encourage you to get olive oil. Make sure it is a single source olive oil. I get mine from Costco, Trader Joe's, and Aldi, single source olive oil. Well, the second habit is exercise. The reason it's so important is that exercise gives us oxygen and nutrient delivery to the brain. It has anti-inflammatory benefits. It stimulates an increase in brain peptides. And it's often described as miracle grow for the brain. So when we are exercising, we're giving our brain fertilizer. The brain is vascular, so exercise affects the infrastructure of the brain, the chemicals, the hormones that are inside the brain. You know, it's interesting to look at the number of steps that we need daily to give us good health. And it's really surprising the number of steps in a day that are considered sedentary. For just a moment, write down a number, or think of that number of steps that you think would be a sedentary lifestyle. It's pretty surprising that it is 5,000 steps a day. For most agree that that is an example of a sedentary lifestyle. So when we do around 3,000 to 4,000, that we do show significant brain benefits, but it's not enough. About 7,000 steps a day is a strong, realistic goal associated with broader health benefits and brain benefits. So 7,000 is really what we need to be striving for. Do you know the best exercise for brain health? Think about that for just a moment. Best exercise, leg exercises. One study showed that people who did leg exercises reduced the chance of progression from pre-dementia to dementia by more than 30%. That's important, isn't it? Leg exercises. They're building muscles in our legs, and it doesn't take a lot each day to activate those muscles. So I encourage you to do squats and lunges, or do what I do. I bounce on a trampoline. It's called rebounding. I do that most days for at least 20 minutes. And then we do need to do our weights, because we need resistance to help build strong bones. So you can do chair squats. You can do long leg extensions from just sitting in a chair. You can just go up and down on your toes to build those calf muscles. All kinds of wonderful things that you can do to increase your leg exercises, your steps, and get some good brain health. Well, unwinding is habit number 3. I think we all agree that life is very stressful. And people who are under a lot of stress, who are great worriers, who don't get a handle on their stress, are producing a stress hormone, cortisol. That has damaging effects on the brain. Do you know that it even causes shrinkage in the brain? It causes inflammation, and it affects the gut. It gives us insulin resistance and high blood pressure. All of this because we're not managing stress. So think for a moment about your stress level and how you are managing your stress level. And that is where we need to learn to unwind. Most of our stress, well, I guess all of our stress is really driven by what we think. It's by our thoughts. So think about your emotional life, your thought life, and learn to handle those emotions, that stress, not by suppressing them, but by appropriately expressing them. First of all, acknowledge negative emotions. Acknowledge the stress. Acknowledge that life is hard and sometimes things disappoint us. I know it happens to me. I get disappointed in something, and then I have a moment where I'm in a tizzy, I get stressed out, and then I have to remember to get a handle on it, to practice my deep breathing, to put things in perspective, and then to move forward. So the first thing is acknowledge that we have stress, we have negative emotions. Next is we want to challenge the depth of our negative emotions. Identify it, claim what's behind it. What is this driving me to live in a negative mindset? Because that's where we begin to damage our brain with living with that negative mindset, ongoing stress, reliving it. And so we want to learn to rise above a circumstance. We need to say that this is a feeling I have. It doesn't necessarily reflect the truth. I can control what I am thinking about this. I can rise above this circumstance. It is my choice. And then you begin to acknowledge, and then you begin to move forward. One strategy to do to de-stress is to write yourself a letter. Acknowledge your emotions. Journal it. Journaling is very good for the brain. And did you know that writing cursively is even better than just handwriting? Our brain works in different ways when we begin to write cursively. And so record what your thoughts are with a plan to move forward. Sometimes we just want to stay in that cycle of just writing all the bad things and never rising to the occasion of beginning to find a way out of that negative pattern. And so we want to begin to think positively and actively. Dr. Caroline Leaf says that it's really important for our brain to have thinker time. Thinker time. That means time alone where we're doing deep thinking, we're meditating, and that is called metacognition, thinking about our thinking. It gives us a clue about the direction of our thoughts and helps us to realize what our stresses are and the things that affect our thoughts and our actions and our words. Well, once we begin to analyze that and think about it, then we move into de-stressing. There are many ways to de-stress. Prayer and meditation are really both important for me to de-stress. Yoga and Tai Chi and listening to beautiful music and taking quiet walks, journaling, spending time in nature are wonderful ways to de-stress. I encourage people to, when you're stressful, change whatever you're doing. If you're sitting and you're mulling and you're reliving and you are going down that negative pattern, that cycle that takes you down into the depths, into the pit, we want to take our way out. We need to do something different. We need to get up, change the thought pattern, turn on the music, take a walk, do something very positive and uplifting, call a friend, begin to dance, begin to laugh hard and out loud. So do something different to get out of that negative cycle. Well, the fourth habit is restore. And what the Sherzais are referring to is restorative sleep. Deep sleep is that dynamic, active stage of our brain. It's when we're asleep that our brain is the most active. It's not when we are awake. During our sleep, when we get that deep sleep, our brain is reorganizing. It's cleaning itself up. And so lack of that deep restorative sleep is causing our brain to shrink. Again, we don't need that to happen, do we? Well, it's lack of sleep. It not only causes brain shrinkage, but it also is a loss of concentration, a loss of focus and attention. It puts us in a low mood, and we're at an increased risk for other health problems, including stroke. Listen to this. It's also during sleep that our beta amyloid plaque, which is the part of the pathology of Alzheimer's, are broken down. That's why restorative sleep is so important. The beta amyloid plaques are being broken down in restorative sleep. The Sherzais say we need 7 to 8 hours of restorative sleep for optimal brain health. It's when the lymph fluids begin to flow and our brain cleans itself out. Think of a nighttime janitor who's going through a building and she is putting away, she's organizing, she's cleaning up the walls and the floors and moving about to get things in their right order. That's what happens to us in our sleep. Our memories get organized into the right files in the right file cabinet of our hippocampus where our long-term memories are stored. It can't happen if we are not sleeping. For whatever reason, too much caffeine, too much alcohol, eating a meal too late at night, our mind begins to wonder, it's too hot, it's too cold, or whatever the reason is. We need to practice some good sleep hygiene, identifying the foods that might be affecting our sleep, controlling the amount of light in the room, learning to get the temperature just right. So it usually needs to be pretty cool in a room to get a good night's sleep. And then we need to practice getting control of our thoughts, making sure we turn off our screens at least an hour before we go to sleep. So I would encourage you to do some practices to help you when you are awake in the middle of the night. It happens to me also, and my mind begins to race. These are some of the things that I've been working on. These are effective techniques for nighttime wakings. We want to work on our breathing. We want to take numerous deep breaths, especially with a longer exhale than an inhale. It's really key to triggering a relaxation response. So consider the 4-7-8 method. And that means you breathe in through your nose for 4 seconds. Then you hold your breath for 7, and then you exhale through your mouth as if you're blowing through a straw for 8 seconds. And you repeat this cycle as long as you need to. I have found that very helpful in helping me to get back to sleep. And then there's also the 8-second countdown. Sleep medicine specialists suggest that deep breathing while you're counting backwards, that's another way to do this. Just take in deep breaths and count from 8 down. Continue for about 5 rounds, and you're focusing just on your breathing. The key here is using breathing to reset your brain so that you can sleep well. Well, rest is not laziness. It's a part of God's good design for us. And sleep and recovery help the mind and the body function as they should. So let's work toward restorative sleep. Number 5, the 5th habit is called optimize. This refers to feeding the brain social and multimodal activities to challenge and engage multiple brain centers. Well, in doing these challenging activities, we are creating a cognitive reserve. And that's what builds resilience in our brains. That's what protects us from cognitive decline. Now, these are challenging and engaging activities we're talking about. But before we get to those, let's look at some quick and fun things that we can do that aren't really engaging multiple brain centers necessarily, but they are some ways to engage our brain. I do Wordle every day, and that's a fun way to figure out where letters need to go to form a word, and it's engaging. It wakes my brain up. And I do Minute Cryptic, and that's a friend got me into that. It's a puzzle that drives me crazy because you have to think cryptically, but it's a fun and engaging thing to do for the brain. Some people do Sudoku and crosswords, and those are all really good. But optimizing involves something just a little bit more. It's complex behaviors that use real life activities that engage multiple domains in the brain. For example, dancing, learning a new language, even studying for a certification. That's really good for the brain as well. Learning a new instrument, learning new songs to play on an instrument, learning to play a new game that is involved and detailed. I'm getting ready to learn how to play Mahjong. Any of you Mahjong fans out there? That's a new and interesting thing for me to learn. I'll be doing that. Leading a group. That is good for your brain because your brain has to work in different modalities. And so all those things are good. Now, I like to play the piano. I'm a moderate piano player, but I love to play. It's really good for me. It's for my health and for a relaxing thing to do, but it's really good for my brain. And so optimizing means undertaking these activities that have multiple functions and give a cognitive reserve. And doing these activities that I suggested do just that. Let me give you an example of when I just practice the piano. I'm reading notes on a page, and that is the language center of my brain that's activated. I'm moving my fingers across the keyboard. That's the sensory cortex, a visual cortex in my brain. I'm mentally processing it. That is the frontal lobe. I'm listening for pitch and rhythm. Did I count correctly, and did I get the pitch right? That's an auditory cortex and the temporal lobe. I'm reading sheet music and I'm tracking the notes as I go across the page. That's the occipital lobe. I'm having to pay attention. I'm getting the sequence. I'm getting the timing. That's the prefrontal cortex. I'm working on memory of some chords that I play that I may have to repeat, and that's sticking into my hippocampus. hippocampus. I'm becoming creative and I'm emotionally engaged in it. That's the amygdala, the emotional center of my brain. And I'm feeling rewarded when I do it well. And that's this dopamine hit that I get. My right brain and my left brain are having to work together. So the two sides of my brain are talking to themselves. And so all of those, it's good for our brain. That's what I mean by doing optimizing habits that are challenging, that are reaching different modal centers of the brain. So how are you actively, frequently feeding your brain with social and multimodal activities? Consider that, and then find a new habit so that you can have the best possible brain health. You know, I'm going to be doing this in a class, and these are some activities we're going to be doing, and you can do this right now. Practice things that are going to help you in optimizing your brain health. One thing is to practice tasks with the opposite hand you're familiar with using. For example, begin to brush your teeth with the other hand. Try writing with the other hand. For example, I might ask you to write something right now. Write your first name with the opposite hand. Just go ahead and do that right now. Get out a piece of paper and a pencil. If you're right-handed, write your name with the opposite hand. Next, draw a triangle. So make the 3 lines of a triangle, and then in that triangle, put a star inside the triangle. And then think for a moment, was that awkward for you? Write down a word that describes how that felt to you. You can pause this video and practice doing those things just so you can see how it feels. Because if it's awkward, that's good, because it means your brain is really working to do this successfully. It teaches us that we're practicing for attention, for coordination, flexibility, and we're working our memory at the same time. Our brain is working harder, and it has to manage more than one thing at a time. That's good for us. There are also things I'll be doing in a group that you can do right now, and it's listening for a pattern and repeating the pattern that I say. And what we're doing when I do this practice is we're training the brain to hold information, to sequence the information, and then to repeat it. And so I would ask you to do these 4 things: clap, clap, pause, and clap. It sounds like this. And so you would do that with me. And then we're going to add another step. We're going to say the word hope. Hope. And then we're going to do it again, and we're going to add another word. This time we're going to add the number 3, and it sounds like this. Hope 3. And then we'll do it again, and we're going to add another word. We're going to add the word apple, and it sounds like this. Hope 3, apple. And so you would repeat it after me each time. You can pause this and practice doing that and see how well you do. It's sequencing, and it's helping our brain to remember a sequence. And we could go on and on. We could add other motions. We could stand up and sit down. We could do something with our eyes, our head. Lots of things in the sequence. Now, why does this work? It helps our attention, our listening, our memory, our sequencing, and so it's good for brain health. There are games that you can do. You can do puzzles. You can do card games. You can do Scrabble. You can do word searches. You can do chess. You can do these games on your computer or on your phone or on a hard copy. But keep in mind that in order to build that cognitive reserve, and by that I mean those neural networks that are resilient, that are maintaining function even when there's damage to the brain cells, that reserve we want to have, those billions of neurons connecting with each other. We want to do this, and the best way to do that is to challenge ourselves. So if we've been doing those games and we're on the beginner level, we want to increase our level to get to the mastery level, and then we want to find a new practice, learning new things rather than repeating familiar mental activities helps to build cognitive reserve. So keep that in mind with the crosswords and with the other puzzles that you might do and the other games. Keep building toward mastery and learn new ones. Well, let me close by saying this. We can combine some of this idea of unwinding and building cognitive reserve can be done through our time of prayer and meditation and deep thinking. All of that is important for our spiritual life, and it's important for our brain health. Prayer and meditation draws us closer to Christ, and it builds up mental clarity and emotional stability. And when we're reading the Bible, we're reading our devotions, we are challenging ourselves intellectually. We're stimulating our mind, and we're getting renewed at the same time. We're getting focused, and we're getting spiritually engaged while we are building cognitive reserve and deep thinking. Every day we need to practice deep thinking. I do this after I do my time of meditation, reading the Bible, and my prayer time. I do a lot of deep thinking, whether it's a book I'm reading, or I'm studying someone's research, or I'm looking at an article, or I'm watching a podcast to learn something. That helps our mental health. It builds cognitive resilience, and it promotes good, positive thought patterns. We want to do that. Your memory is worth protecting, and simple daily choices matter. So much of this is in our control. So I encourage you, choose one small habit to make and begin to practice that. That's going to make a big difference in many aspects of your life, including brain health. So I encourage you to do that. I hope this has been helpful. I hope you'll think about the 5 habits, and you'll begin to ask yourselves which ones need a little bit of a boost, which one you pay attention to most, and what is the one small step you're going to take to improve your mental resilience. May God bless, and let me know what your thoughts are about this. Thanks.